The wind howled like a living thing across the rooftop ballroom of the Apex Tower, Chicago's most luxurious winter gala. Thick snow whipped sideways in furious white sheets, turning the elegant string lights into hazy, ghostly halos. The cold bit deep into my bones, but I kept moving. My arms ached. The heavy silver tray dug into my forearm like a constant punishment after 6 long hours of weaving between laughing guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. My cheap black flats were soaked through, every step sending icy water squelching between my numb toes. I was only 24, but tonight I felt ancient. Just another invisible waitress trying to survive the night so I could make rent next month. Then everything changed in a single heartbeat. Half hidden behind a tall marble column, a man in a crisp black vest stood unnaturally still. His face was calm, almost bored. But I saw his right hand slide slowly, deliberately inside his jacket. The moment the matte black barrel of the gun glinted under the lights, my stomach dropped like a stone. He was aiming directly at Vincent Kane, the man who ruled the shadows of this city. Tall, commanding, dressed in dark charcoal that seemed to absorb the storm itself. Vincent Kane moved through the crowd like he owned the snow, the night, and every soul in it. Time fractured. My mind screamed at me to turn away. "Don't be stupid, Emma. You're nobody here. This isn't your fight. Walk away before you get killed." Fear clawed up my throat. My hands started to shake. I thought of my tiny apartment, my exhausted body, the 3 jobs I worked just to stay afloat. One smart choice meant staying invisible. One wrong move meant death. But my body refused to listen. I drew in one sharp, freezing breath, and I acted. With every ounce of strength left in my tired arms, I hurled the entire tray forward. Dozens of crystal glasses shattered against the marble floor in a violent explosion of sound. Crimson wine erupted into the air like fresh blood, spraying across white tablecloths, designer dresses, and shocked faces. Screams and chaos erupted instantly. A gunshot cracked through the howling storm, sharp, merciless, final. The bullet screamed past my left ear so close I felt its burning heat brush my skin like the devil's breath. It slammed into the wooden beam right behind Vincent Kane with a sickening thud. The entire rooftop seemed to freeze. Snow continued to swirl around us. Voices shouted in panic. Security rushed forward. But all I could see was him. Vincent Kane's dark, piercing eyes locked onto mine through the chaos of flying wine and falling snow. There was no surprise in them, no gratitude. Only a raw, burning intensity that pinned me where I stood, as if he was seeing straight into my soul. My chest heaved. My legs trembled violently. Wine dripped from my fingers like blood, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. What had I just done? I had thrown myself between a bullet and the most powerful, most dangerous man in Chicago. In that single frozen moment, with the storm raging around me and the taste of fear thick on my tongue, one terrifying truth crashed over me like an avalanche. My old life, the endless shifts, the lonely nights, the constant struggle just to survive, was over. And I had no idea whether I had just saved a man or stepped straight into the jaws of his dangerous world. The chaos on the rooftop lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Security swarmed the area, guests were ushered inside, and the storm continued its relentless howl. I stood frozen in place, wine still dripping from my uniform, my body shaking so violently I could barely stand. Vincent Kane moved through the panic like a shadow come to life. His dark eyes never left me as he issued quiet orders to the men who appeared at his side. Before I could even speak, 2 of them gently but firmly took my arms and guided me away from the crowd. I didn't fight. I couldn't. My mind was still replaying the gunshot, the heat of the bullet brushing my ear, and those intense eyes that had locked onto mine. They put me in the back of a black SUV. Vincent slid in beside me without a word. The doors closed with a heavy thud, sealing out the storm and the noise. The silence inside the car was suffocating. "You just saved my life," he said finally, his voice low and rough, like gravel under snow. "But in doing so, you've painted a target on your own back." I swallowed hard, staring at my trembling hands. I didn't think. I just reacted. He studied me for a long moment, the city lights sliding across his sharp features as the car moved through the snowy streets. That kind of reaction makes you dangerous. To them, and now to me. The drive felt endless. When we finally stopped, I looked up to see a massive stone mansion rising against the dark shore of Lake Michigan. Snow blanketed the grounds, making the place look like something out of a dark fairy tale. Beautiful, cold, and completely isolated. Vincent led me inside without asking if I wanted to follow. The heavy doors closed behind us with a finality that sent ice down my spine. "This is where you'll stay," he said simply, "until I'm sure the threat is gone." I stopped in the grand foyer, my wet shoes leaving tracks on the marble. "Wait. What? I can't just stay here. I have a job. I have a life. My roommate—" "Your life is in danger now because of me," he cut in, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The man who pulled that trigger wasn't working alone. If they saw what you did, they'll come for you. And they won't miss twice." My chest tightened. I thought of my tiny apartment with its leaking faucet and thin walls. I thought of the 3 jobs I juggled just to keep the lights on. All of it felt so small now. So fragile. "I didn't ask for this," I whispered, my voice cracking. "No," Vincent replied quietly. "You didn't. But debt is debt. I pay mine." He introduced me to Damon Reed, his right-hand man, a tall, serious figure who watched me with careful eyes. Then there was Nico Vale, his younger cousin, who leaned against the wall with crossed arms and a skeptical frown. "She's a liability," Nico muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. "She's under my protection," Vincent answered, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. They left me in a beautiful but cold guest room overlooking the frozen lake. The moment the door clicked shut, I sank onto the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This wasn't protection. This was a cage. A beautiful, luxurious cage surrounded by snow and armed men. Later that night, my phone rang. It was Lila Harper, my best friend and roommate. "Emma, where are you? I saw the news about some shooting at the gala. Are you okay?" I closed my eyes, fighting the lump in my throat. "I'm safe, Lila, but I can't come home tonight." Her voice rose with worry. "Safe where? What's going on? You sound scared." I wanted to tell her everything, about the gun, the bullet, the man whose life I had saved. But Vincent's warning echoed in my head. The less she knew, the safer she would be. "I'll explain later," I said softly. "Just don't worry about me." When the call ended, the silence of the mansion pressed in heavier than before. Vincent found me standing by the tall windows, staring out at the dark, churning lake. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body against the cold glass. "You're angry," he said after a while. "Of course I'm angry," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "You took my choice away. I saved your life, and now I'm trapped here like some kind of collateral." He turned to face me fully. For the first time, I saw something beneath the hard mask, a flicker of exhaustion, maybe even pain. "I've lost people I cared about because I wasn't careful enough. I won't make that mistake with you." His words hung between us, heavy with unspoken history. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of the man behind the reputation. Not just the Winter King of Chicago's underworld, but someone carrying deep scars from a past he rarely showed. A strange pull stirred in my chest, fear mixed with an unwelcome curiosity. He was dangerous, powerful, yet standing here in the quiet, he felt almost human. "I don't know how to live like this," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I've spent years fighting to be free, and now—" Vincent reached out slowly, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. The touch was surprisingly gentle. "You don't have to fight alone anymore," he said softly. But as his words settled over me, I felt the weight of everything I had lost pressing down harder. My freedom, my simple, exhausting life, the illusion that I could control my own destiny. The injustice burned deep inside, quiet, simmering, impossible to ignore. I had traded my fragile independence for safety in a world I didn't understand. And the worst part was, some small, terrifying part of me wasn't sure I wanted to leave. The days in the lakeside mansion blurred into one another, each one heavier than the last. I moved through the grand rooms like a ghost, my old life feeling further away with every passing hour. Then the shadows began to close in. It started with small things. A black car parked too long across the street from the estate. A broken window at one of Vincent's legitimate businesses downtown. Whispers from Damon Reed about incidents on the south side. But I knew it was more than coincidence when Vincent's face grew darker each time he returned from meetings. Marcus Hale had learned my name. The first direct threat came on a quiet Tuesday night. I was sitting by the tall windows overlooking the frozen lake when Damon handed Vincent a folded note. Vincent read it once, and his jaw tightened so hard I heard the faint click of his teeth. He didn't hide it from me this time. "They know what you did that night," he said, his voice low and controlled, but I could hear the storm beneath it. "Marcus sent a message. He wants you to understand that saving me made you part of this war." My fingers went cold around the mug of tea I was holding. "What exactly did he say?" Vincent hesitated, only for a second, then read the words aloud. "Pretty little bird who flew into the wrong cage, clip her wings before she sings." The paper trembled slightly in his hand, or maybe it was mine. I couldn't tell anymore. That night, fear settled deep in my bones and refused to leave. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering the sound of the gunshot on the rooftop, the way the bullet had passed so close to my ear. Now that same danger had a name, Marcus Hale. And he wasn't coming for Vincent alone. He was coming for me. Vincent's protectiveness grew sharper, almost suffocating. He insisted I never leave the grounds without him or Damon. When I tried to walk the snowy path near the lake alone, Nico Vale appeared within minutes, arms crossed, watching me with that familiar mix of suspicion and reluctant concern. "You're not a prisoner," Vincent told me one evening as we stood in his study, the fire crackling softly behind us. "But I won't lose you because I was careless." His words should have comforted me. Instead, they stirred something complicated and terrifying in my chest. Every time he looked at me, every time his hand brushed mine while passing a glass or adjusting my coat, I felt it. That dangerous pull. A warmth I had no right to want. A connection I desperately wished wasn't there. I was drowning between two worlds. Part of me wanted to run, to call Lila, beg her to pick me up, and disappear back into my old, exhausting life where the only thing I feared was missing rent. But another part, the part that grew stronger every day, couldn't stop thinking about the way Vincent's eyes softened when he thought I wasn't looking. The quiet way he carried old pain behind that cold mask. 2 days later, Lila Harper showed up at the gates. She had used every favor she had to get past security. When I saw her standing in the foyer, cheeks red from the cold, eyes wide with worry, my heart nearly broke. "Emma, what the hell is going on?" she whispered as we hugged. You've been gone for days. You sound different on the phone. I'm scared for you. I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her cheap vanilla perfume. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. The gunshot, the threats, the confusing feelings I couldn't name. But I saw Vincent watching from the hallway, his expression unreadable but tense. I'm safe here, I lied softly, even as the words tasted bitter. It's complicated, Lila, but I'm okay. She pulled back and searched my face. You don't look okay. You look trapped. Before I could answer, Eleanor Voss arrived. She was an elegant woman in her late 40s, the powerful businesswoman who had hosted the Midwinter Masquerade. Vincent had apparently reached out to her for help securing certain legitimate connections. When she walked into the sitting room, her presence filled the space with quiet authority. Miss Hayes, she said, offering me a warm but measured smile. I heard what happened that night. Not many people would have done what you did. We spoke alone for nearly an hour. She listened as I poured out my fears, my confusion, the growing conflict inside me. Her words were gentle but honest. Courage doesn't always feel like strength, Emma. Sometimes it feels like chains. The real question is whether you're willing to carry the weight, or if you'll let fear make the choice for you. Her words lingered long after she left. That night, the tension finally broke. Another message arrived. This one was delivered directly to the mansion gates. A single white rose stained with red at the petals, accompanied by a note addressed to me. Next time, the bullet won't miss the bird. I stood in the hallway holding the note, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read the words. Tears burned in my eyes, but this time they weren't just from fear. They were from rage. Rage at Marcus Hale for turning my life into a battlefield. Rage at Vincent for pulling me into his world. And rage at myself. Because no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't deny the way my heart raced every time Vincent stepped closer to protect me. Vincent appeared at my side instantly. He took the note from my hands, his fingers brushing mine. For the first time, I saw something raw and unguarded in his eyes. A fierce, almost desperate need to keep me safe. I won't let him touch you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not now. Not ever. I looked up at him, torn between the urge to push him away and the terrifying desire to lean into his strength. I'm scared, Vincent, I whispered. I don't know who I am anymore. He didn't pull me into his arms. He simply stood there, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body, and spoke with quiet intensity. Then let me show you. So. The air between us crackled with unspoken words and dangerous possibilities. My old life was slipping away faster than I could hold on to it, and the man standing in front of me, the man I had saved on a snowy rooftop, was becoming something I both feared and craved. The shadows were closing in. The note arrived at dawn, slipped under the heavy front door like a whisper from hell. A single photograph of Lila Harper. Her hands bound, her eyes wide with terror, and on the back, in neat black ink, bring the bird to the old warehouse by the lake at midnight. Come alone, or your friend dies slowly. My knees buckled. The photo fluttered to the floor as a soundless scream tore through my chest. Lila, my only real friend, the one person who had always believed in me when the world didn't. And now she was paying for my one reckless act on that snowy rooftop. I sank against the wall, tears streaming down my face. For the first time since the gala, the weight of everything crashed over me completely. Every moment I had spent hiding in this beautiful cage, every time I had let Vincent's protection wrap around me like chains, it had led to this. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't stay silent. If I did nothing, the people I loved would keep paying the price for my fear. By the time the storm hit its peak that night, I had made my choice. I stole one of the estate's smaller cars while the guards were changing shifts. The snow came down in blinding sheets as I drove toward the abandoned warehouse on the desolate stretch of lakeshore. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Fear clawed at my throat, but beneath it burned something new, a fierce, desperate resolve. I was done being the girl who only reacted. Tonight, I would act. The warehouse loomed ahead like a rotting skeleton against the frozen lake. I killed the engine and stepped into the howling blizzard, my coat whipping around me. Marcus Hale was waiting inside, surrounded by 3 of his men. Lila sat tied to a metal chair in the center of the room, her face pale but unbroken. "Emma," Lila whispered, voice cracking when she saw me. Marcus smiled, cold, satisfied, cruel. The little bird finally flew to me. How touching. I forced my voice steady even as my heart tried to hammer its way out of my chest. "Let her go. This is between you and me. She has nothing to do with any of this." Marcus laughed softly. "Everything you touch becomes mine to break now. You made yourself part of Kane's world the moment you saved him." I took a slow step forward, using every ounce of courage I had left. My ordinary clothes, my trembling hands, my fear. I turned them all into weapons. "You think you're winning?" I said, my voice quiet but clear. "You think kidnapping my friend makes you strong? It only proves how weak you really are. Vincent Kane doesn't need bullets to destroy you. He has something you'll never understand. People who are willing to stand with him." While I spoke, my fingers carefully pressed the small recording device Eleanor Voss had given me days earlier, hidden in my coat pocket. I kept Marcus talking, provoking him, drawing out every threat, every admission. The storm outside grew louder, wind screaming through the broken windows. Then the doors burst open with violent force. Vincent stormed in like vengeance given form, Damon and Nico right behind him, guns drawn. The air instantly thickened with lethal tension. Marcus's men raised their weapons. For one terrifying second, I thought everything would end in blood. "Vincent, stop!" I cried, stepping directly between the 2 men. Vincent's eyes blazed with fury and raw fear as they locked onto mine. "Emma, get out of the way." "No." My voice shook, but I didn't move. "If you shoot him now, you become exactly what he wants you to be. Another monster in this endless war." Marcus smirked, clearly enjoying the chaos. "Listen to your little bird, Kane, or watch her die first." I turned to Vincent, tears freezing on my lashes from the cold wind pouring in. My heart was breaking open right there in that freezing warehouse. "I'm not asking you to be weak," I said, my voice raw with emotion. "I'm asking you to trust me. I have proof. Everything he just said, it's recorded. Eleanor Voss is waiting with federal contacts. We can end this the right way, not with more blood on your hands." Vincent stood frozen, chest heaving, the gun still raised. I saw the war raging inside him. The instinct to protect me by destroying everything in his path versus the terrifying leap of faith I was begging him to take. Seconds stretched into eternity. The storm howled louder outside, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Then, slowly, painfully, Vincent lowered his weapon. His eyes never left mine. In that single look, I saw everything. The depth of his fear for me, the weight of his past, and something deeper that neither of us had dared name yet. "Stand down," he ordered his men, voice hoarse. Marcus's smile faltered for the first time. In that moment, everything shifted. I was no longer the scared waitress who had thrown a tray on a snowy rooftop. I was no longer hiding behind Vincent's protection. I had become the one forcing the powerful men in this room to choose a different path. And as the sirens began to wail faintly in the distance, Eleanor's doing, I realized with trembling clarity that courage wasn't just about saving someone else's life. Sometimes, it was about finally daring to save your own. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the howling storm like a promise of justice finally arriving. Inside the freezing warehouse, Marcus Hale's face twisted with disbelief as federal agents poured in, guns drawn, voices shouting commands. The evidence I had recorded, every threat, every admission, played clearly on the device now in Eleanor Voss's hands. Marcus was taken away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling in real time under the flashing lights of news cameras that had been tipped off. For the first time, the shadows he had ruled for years were dragged into the blinding light of day. I stood there trembling, snow melting in my hair, watching as the man who had tried to break me was led outside. Lila was freed instantly. She ran into my arms, sobbing, both of us holding each other so tightly it hurt. "I'm so sorry," I whispered against her hair, my voice breaking. "I never wanted you to get hurt because of me." Lila pulled back just enough to look at me, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You came for me, Emma. You faced him alone. Don't you dare apologize for being brave." Vincent watched us from a few steps away, his gun long since holstered. His eyes held a storm of emotions, relief, pride, and something deeper that made my chest ache. For the first time since I had known him, the Winter King of Chicago looked human. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Vincent made a choice no one expected from him. He sat across from Eleanor Voss in his study, the fire crackling softly, and signed the documents that would begin the full legalization of the Kane Empire. No more shadows, no more blood debts. Only legitimate businesses, transparent accounts, and a future built on something other than fear. "I've spent my life protecting what's mine with violence," he told me one quiet evening as we stood by the lake, the ice slowly beginning to thaw. "But you showed me there's another way, a harder way, but maybe a better one." I didn't reply right away. I simply reached for his hand, lacing my fingers through his. The touch still sent electricity through me, but now it carried hope instead of only danger. With Eleanor's guidance and my own growing confidence, I poured everything I had into creating the Winter Hope Foundation. It would help young women like the girl I once was, those fighting 3 jobs, drowning in rent, searching for a way out of desperation. Every time I met with the first group of girls, I saw my own reflection in their tired eyes, and I felt something inside me heal. Lila recovered slowly. She visited often, no longer afraid of the mansion or the man who lived there. One afternoon, she pulled me aside and said softly, "I used to think being strong meant never needing anyone. You taught me that real strength is knowing when to let someone stand with you." Even Nico Vale changed. The once skeptical cousin who had called me a liability began to soften. During a quiet dinner, he raised his glass and looked at me with new respect. "I was wrong about you, Emma. Blood makes families, but trust keeps them alive. Welcome to ours." 6 months later, the snow fell gently over Chicago once again, soft this time, almost peaceful. The Winter Hope Foundation held its grand opening in a bright, renovated building downtown. Lights glowed warmly against the white landscape. Guests filled the room, legitimate business partners, young women from the foundation, and a few familiar faces from Vincent's old world who had chosen to walk the new path with him. I stood near the stage in a deep emerald dress, watching Vincent speak with quiet confidence about building something that would last beyond power and fear. When his eyes found mine across the room, the look he gave me made my heart stumble. After the applause died down, he walked straight to me. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as Vincent Kane, the man who once ruled Chicago's underworld, slowly lowered himself to one knee in front of me. Snowflakes drifted through the open glass doors behind us, sparkling like tiny stars. "Emma Hayes," he said, his voice low but steady, carrying across the silent hall. "6 months ago, you threw everything away to save a stranger in the middle of a storm. You didn't just save my life that night. You saved the man I wanted to become. He pulled out a simple but elegant ring, a single diamond that caught the light like fresh snow. I don't want to face any future without you by my side. Not as my protector, not as my debt, but as my equal, my partner, my home. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I looked into his eyes, those same dark eyes that had locked onto mine through chaos and wine and falling snow so many months ago. Yes, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. 1,000 times. Yes. He rose and slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into his arms. The kiss we shared was slow, deep, and full of every unsaid word between us: fear, courage, loss, and finally, love. As we stood there, hands tightly clasped, the snow continued to fall outside, gentle, cleansing, new. Two people from completely different worlds. A struggling waitress who dared to act. A powerful man who dared to change. In that moment, I understood the deepest truth of all. Sometimes the bravest decision you'll ever make is the one that costs you everything you thought you knew and gives you back something far greater. This story is about how one act of courage can ripple far beyond a single moment, teaching us that real justice doesn't always come from revenge or power, but from the quiet, difficult choice to become better than the darkness that once defined us. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure. But every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audio-visual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.